Momentum is a good word. And keeping up with that word, the momentum, we have our President Pro Tem like to share a few questions, comments.
More comments than any questions. I'm going to let you do the job of the question as well as answers. But I want to thank you, Mr. Chair of this Select Committee, for convening this important gathering of many wonderful folks, to Senators Morel as well as Benjamin Allen, and thank you very much for your participation. Two of these individuals, Senators Wessel as well as Benjamin Allen, were part of the delegation to Mexico City just last year, and hopefully Mr. Morel will join us in September, later in this fall. But to the Undersecretary Leonardo Beltran, as well as to our distinguished chair of the CEC, to Bob, Weisenmiller, thank you very much for coming, and as well as my good friend, el Dr. Herman, Tribu Kait Vasconcelos, and to all our good friends here, Mr. Simon, obviously Mr. Casey from CalISO. Senator Ben Wessel brings up some very good questions because we are friends, we are neighbors with each other. We share a border, we share culture, we share language, we share gastronomy, we share people. And the question becomes, why not electrons as well? And if we can do so in a manner that, as we talk about conceptually this idea of regionalization, whether it's a Western regionalization as proposed by the CalISO, or a North American concept idea of regionalization and sharing electrons and importing and exporting, clean, renewable energy or clean energy at a low cost to constituents on both sides of the border. I think this is what deserves, hence this committee hearing, to dig in deep and beyond this committee hearing to go deeper in how we can do this in a manner that benefits both economies, the state of California and the Republic of Mexico, how it benefits our economies, especially the carbon-intensive industries that we have on both sides of the border. And you're absolutely right, Undersecretary Beltran, there's no other state in the Union, in the United States, to have a more symbiotic relationship on the energy on the issue of energy and carbon. You're not going to have it with Texas. And you're not going to have it with Arizona, Louisiana, or New Mexico. We're better situated because of a leadership of Senator Ben Wessel, who's also, I think you're the only legislator probably in the United States of America that, as an elected official, has the entire border with California and Mexico. So you have that distinction. But how can we recalibrate a new economy of tomorrow in a manner that's less carbon intensive, where we have less GHG emissions, carbon CO2, as well as other short-lived climate pollutants, co-pollutants, whether they're from stationary or mobile emitters? And how can we do so in a way that is beneficial to both the economies as well as the public health of our families, our children on both sides of the border? I'm really excited because, Mexico in the Western Hemisphere, along with California, has moved aggressively, with the framework of a global emissions agreement that was done legislatively and signed by the President Enrique Peña Nieto in the executive branch. So you have shown a real, commitment to reaching the established targets that you have created through the legislative branch in Mexico. So I'm really excited that we have this opportunity again, and I just want to underscore and emphasize, we have a shared border, a shared mutual self-interest for strong economies on both sides, and doing so in a manner where our children breathe less co-pollutants into their lungs, as well as less carbon emissions in our atmosphere. So I'm really excited about this opportunity and the ability to follow through with subsequent meetings, both here as well as the other side. And to Bob, I want to thank you very much, as always, for your commitment to the important issues. You obviously representing Governor Jerry Brown, the executive branch, and through this committee, Senator Ben Wessel, handling a lot of the policy issues as my chair of energy, but working the executive and legislative in a collaborative, cooperative relationship where there's no surprises, and we can work in a manner that reach the goals that we want to achieve. Again, making sure whatever conceptually we all agree, how we do this is absolutely critical for the public health on both sides, our economies, as well as our rates with regards to energy as we move electrons. But again, we never want to undermine the climate leadership policies of the great state of California. We can't let the perfect get in the way of the good, of course. But, we have to really dig in deep on the really hard technical issues and questions that are before us today. So I just want to thank you very much, Mr. Wessel. I have to get back to my meetings agenda that I know I'm getting yanked to go back to right now. But thank you for your leadership and your commitment to this issue and your leadership as the chair of this committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure. Thanks very much once again, Senator Hueso, Senator Morales, Senator De Leon, and the staff, and all the presents. It was a pleasure to be part of this hearing.
Entirely our pleasure and our honor. Thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is Commissioner Robert Weisenmiller. He's been a regular visitor to our committee, and I want to thank you for your interest in the work of this committee, Mr. Chair. Robert Weisenmiller is the chair of the California Energy Commission. Chairman Weisenmiller was appointed as a member to the California Energy Commission in January 2011 by Governor Brown and reappointed in 2015. He fills the engineer-scientist position on the 5-member commission and is the lead commissioner on legislative and intergovernmental matters, international relations, energy research, development, climate change, and natural gas markets, among other things within the commission. Commissioner Weisenmiller brings more than 30 years of energy experience to the commission, including expertise in electricity and gas markets and California regulatory policies. His presentation will provide an overview on the MOU, the goals of the partnership with Mexico, and current or planned projects that we are very interested in. Welcome, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity today, Chairman Hueso and fellow members of the committee, to discuss, and members of the public. And certainly it's a very distinguished gathering today in terms of following, Leonardo, my friend and colleague, and, certainly the rest of the panel of people I've worked fairly intensely with the last couple of years. It's a great opportunity today to review our relationships with Mexico. And as you know, California has a rich history, indeed a long history, of relationships with Mexico. Frankly, we are partners, friends, and many people, families. And so my goal, frankly, is to use clean energy, clean technology to build bridges between California and Mexico rather than to build walls. And I think with that in mind, with those bridges, we can lead to greater economic prosperity on both sides of the border, and we could also lead to moving forward on addressing the challenge of climate by reducing greenhouse gas emissions on both sides. So we're really, this partnership gives us very much a win-win opportunity, and I would like to really harken back to the experience you and I had, certainly the President Pro Tem had, of being on the trade mission to Mexico a couple years ago. And that was unlike the China trade mission, that was a real partnership between the legislature and the administration. And in that trade mission, the largest component, the largest number of companies were energy companies. And it was very interesting. At the time, some of them had offices in Mexico. As we were going down, some of them were frankly starting to hire and establish offices. And when I went back on a trade mission last year, many of them have offices in Mexico City. So again, I think we're looking at a win-win in the sense that we can work together. We have a very strong, vibrant renewable industry in California, an energy efficiency industry that we have nurtured for almost 40 years. And for them to now grow their businesses over the border. and to bring some of that technology to Mexico. And at the same time, not only, what my position really spans both the go-biz part of how do we build the California economy and investment, and at the same time, how do we address climate issues? And I think clean technology is a rare way to do that. There's a couple of documents that I think were very well summarized, so again, I'll try to be fairly brief. One is, on that trade mission, there was the California-Mexico Energy MOU. And in terms of one of my responsibilities is the implementation of that MOU. And so certainly a lot of focus on following up on that. I get a lot of help at the commission on doing that. Certainly certainly a high priority for the governor to move forward on that. And at the same time, last year there's been a number of below 2 MOUs that have been signed with 8 different Mexican states. 2 of the first signers of the below 2 MOU were Mexican states, Baja and Jalisco. So again, we have the relationship not only on the federal level, but now we have the opportunity to really deepen the relationships with the various provinces. And with these MOUs, again, the basic goal is we all know that California is only 1% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, so if we're going to address the challenge of climate, we have to focus on international issues. But at the same time, it's a real opportunity also for California businesses. One of the really heartening things from today was hearing at the chamber, good morning, hi, at the luncheon speech that, one of our California companies, SunPower, basically won the auction when Mexico went out to buy solar. It was at 4.7 cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, just think about it. I mean, that's really impressive and shows the opportunities for real benefits in Mexico to grow their economy with cheap, clean power. And particularly if our companies are part of the ones building that, as I said, it's a real opportunity for both sides of the border to strengthen that relationship. We're certainly looking forward to future solicitations for wind and geothermal, again, for that sort of development of clean technology as we go forward. I mean, one of the things I think all of us need to think about is obviously this is a partnership. Part of what we're bringing to the partnership is that we have had 40 years to do things which Mexico is trying to do in 3 or 4 years. And so we can help them not make some of the mistakes we've made going forward. And again, we will certainly learn from them as we go forward. A couple of things that we've done, and again, I'm trying to keep it pretty high level, is, as you know, we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on research and development of clean technology. And so I've really tried to really share the results of that technology with our Mexican colleagues. We had an event at UC San Diego, which they hosted, UC San Diego did, and as part of that event, we shared our research on storage, on microgrids, energy efficiency, demand response. Again, it was certainly we had Mexican scholars and scientists coming and sharing some of their results, but it was a very fruitful couple-day conversation. We showed them some of the demonstrations, and we had a similar activity that you attended earlier this year in Imperial, which was looking more on the development side of how could we share the results of the research we've done on geothermal or solar or wind and show them some of the projects there. Again, we all know the border is somewhat artificial, that the geothermal resources, the solar and the wind resources just flow across the border both ways. And so some of the things that we've developed, we can really help, by sharing that technology and that research and really move forward. Same on energy efficiency, demand response. So anyway, really looking forward to sharing the partnership. You'll hear a lot more from UC, but I mean, certainly the University of California, LBNL, Stanford, a number of our institutions are really reaching out across the border to strengthen that relationship on the research side, and that's critical. Obviously, it's also critical in terms of providing some educational opportunities across the board. We've done, as I said, we did the earlier trade mission. We had a follow-up this year, last year, which was very successful. That we did in partnership with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, the Stanford University Bill Lane Center for the American West, and Precourt Institute for Energy. And we had other partners from the U.S. Commercial Services, the embassy in Mexico City, the foreign ministry. But again, it was a good opportunity to take a number of companies down, get them very excited about the opportunities in Mexico, convince them to set up offices, and really, like I said, help grow California's economy while helping clean up Mexico's energy system. We certainly are now going forward. One of the things which you'll hear more about from Keith Casey, but on the first trade mission you and I were on, part of that was Richard Mullen, who was actually the first chair of the Energy Commission and is now the chair of the ISO Board of Governors. Steve Berberick and I met with Mexican officials to start talking, and Baja officials, to start talking about basically an energy imbalance market more between California and Baja. Right. And as part of that, actually in the Mexican reform laws, there's a special provision to enable them.
National balancing authority of sorts.
Exactly. To enable them to take advantage of that opportunity to integrate with well, again, it's imbalance market. We're not talking the sort of regional arrangement that Pacific Corp is, but this is the first step to really deepening the relationship and frankly, sharing some of the advanced technology of the CAISO with Baja and through them to the rest of Mexico and allow them to deal better with the volatility of renewables. So again, that's a very strong partnership I've had with them. Certainly you'll hear a lot later from UC on the partnerships we've had on the energy efficiency side and research side. And again, moving forward, you know, really the opportunities are immense. You know, we have a lot of challenges in terms of demands on all of our time, but this is important that we do it. And I think looking forward over the next year, particularly in partnership with the Energy Foundation, you know, I had the opportunity last year to talk to the students at UNAM, and certainly I would encourage the legislature to, you know, spend more time at UNAM to connect to the education system there, certainly to talk to the leadership. I mean, again, we'd just like to deepen the relationships of our energy ecosystem on both sides of the border and grow it and strengthen it on both sides. So again, love to talk to you more about this and to stay in contact as we go forward. Again, certainly it's a two-way street. One of the things that struck me was when we went on the first trade mission, we had the COO of NRG there, Mauricio Gutierrez. He's now the CEO of NRG, one of the largest energy companies in the world. And he was trained he was born in Mexico. He was trained as an engineer in Mexico, and now leads one of the largest generators in the world. So again, it's really a two-way street from both sides. It's not just California, and I think it's going to strengthen both of us as we deepen this relationship. Certainly happy to talk more on this, and certainly
Fantastic.
my Chief of Staff, Emilio, you know, anytime you want to follow up with us, just let us know.
I appreciate it very much, and I'm going to ask you to stay on where you're at and ask our next speaker, Mr. Herman Tribucate, to come forward. Before I introduce him, I want to make some comments about I think it's exciting to have a binational balancing authority, what that would mean for the renewables market, especially when we talk about how that has the potential to balance the duck chart that everybody talks about, the proverbial duck chart the riddle that we're trying to solve in California. The more that you have renewables that are spread across a larger geographic footprint, the better chance that you have to capture renewable power being generated at different points under different environmental conditions, weather conditions or weather patterns. And I think that's very exciting. That could be very exciting to California, but also could mean savings to the ratepayers, and that you have more producers joining a purchasing exchange. I think that if we can develop that, I think it would be very beneficial to both sides of the border and serve probably as a worldwide model. Exactly. Thank you. Sure. I want to introduce our next presenter, el señor Herman Tribucate is an economist that serves as the North American representative for CENER, Mexico's Secretary of Energy. He has more than 15 years of consulting experience for multiple Fortune 500 companies and specializes in energy, technology development, and sustainability. Mr. Tribucate holds a PhD in economics from Harvard University. Harvard is very well represented today, by the way. Mr. Tribucate will talk about Center's efforts in the implementation of the MOU and future project proposals. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and we're very honored to have you here today.
Thank you, Chair.
And you're wearing the crimson tie.
Indeed. Thank you. Mr. Chair, honorable senators, and members of the Select Committee, distinguished guests, Mr. Chair, esteemed colleagues. It is a great honor for me. It is a pleasure and it is inspiring to be here with you today. I want to thank you for the invitation again, Mr. Chair. We gather here today to talk about a topic that I care deeply, namely how to accelerate the development of energy efficiency and renewable energy partnerships between California and Mexico. The challenge of our generation and of generations to come is climate change. This challenge is directly linked to energy. And this is not only a challenge for Californians and Mexicans, it is a threat to our planet. Together, the great state of California and Mexico have the opportunity to rise to this challenge and work together to lead the world in this fight and to demonstrate that accelerating an effective transition to a low-carbon economy actually expands markets, creates markets, and fosters economic growth, creates jobs and prosperity, and in addition, protects our planet. This is also true for developing countries. It's not only true here in California. In Mexico, in addition to the energy reform and the Energy Transition Act that Deputy Secretary Beltran mentioned, we have launched ambitious R&D programs, including energy innovation hubs and much more. I should emphasize that we also have an ambitious collaboration agenda, or we have developed an ambitious collaboration agenda with the US, with Canada, with California, and many other nations. We are convinced that the future is as bright as the sun if the world comes together and works together, and if we build bridges and tear down walls. We're facing a global threat that requires a global response. This is the spirit of Governor Brown's Under 2 MOU. That effort that brings together other states and subnational governments to act on climate. This is also the spirit of initiatives such as SB 350 and Prop 39. This is the type of leadership that the world needs. Sharing California experience, its lessons learned and best practices, its mistakes, its brainpower, and its will to lead by example and to change the world is very powerful. Moreover, showing that California's approach to climate and energy also works in a middle-income country would be very powerful to bring in more countries on board. We need this type of success stories, of real stories, not in labs, not in small, rich neighborhoods or communities, but in real buildings, in real power plants, and in entire countries, especially in developing and poor countries. As Governor Brown states, the most abundant natural resource in California is brain power. I believe that the same holds true in Mexico. Brain power and solar radiation. And both of them remain relatively untapped, which in fact represents the great opportunities that we're discussing here today. Just to put this in perspective, today's total solar PV installed capacity in Mexico is more or less 100 megawatts, 100 megawatts. We can compare that to more than 8,000 megawatts just in California. This gives you an idea, and it's just one example of the growth potential, the business opportunity, and the many opportunities in renewable energy that we have in Mexico and in California. We're evaluating currently and developing collaboration projects and ideas that could be led together with our friends here in California, with the chair and the California Energy Commission, with our friends at UC, at Lawrence Berkeley, at Stanford. This could be developed in partnerships with Mexican research institutions, working on specific projects that could be up and running in the short term is a clear opportunity, always keeping a long-term view. These projects include energy efficiency programs and distributed energy projects that could significantly benefit both sides of the border. We need projects that could easily be replicated and scaled at universities, buildings, schools, and everywhere. This collaboration between California and Mexico could also help to train the next generation of scientists and engineers, those that are going to complete the mission against climate change. California has partnered with Mexican states who have joined Governor Brown's Under 2 MOU initiative. More states may join. This collaboration between California and Mexico could create the spark that accelerates the exponential growth of solar and renewable energy in Mexico and in the developing world. Experts and institutions of California, such as the ones present here and many more, could add the brainpower, the experience to accomplish this exponential growth and to help the renewable energy revolution that is waiting to happen right next door. Working together, we can meet the Under 2 and the Paris Agreement ambitious goals. CENER and the Energy Sustainability Fund have been actively collaborating with California's leading research institutions. In terms of future project proposals and opportunities, California's leading research institutions could play this role that I mentioned, that is essential, and we could work together on the integration of Mexico's energy sector with California, with the US, and with Canada. These opportunities would generate many significant benefits to the people of California, including expanded markets and more growth to California companies, more jobs, less pollution, lower greenhouse gas emissions, and a healthier and more sustainable environment. Mexico's structural reforms, including the Energy Reform and the Energy Transition Act, open the door to these opportunities. For example, we could develop and further strengthen partnerships with our universities such as UNAM, Universidad de Guadalajara, TEC de Monterrey, Ibero, ITAM, and many other leading universities to help adopt similarly aggressive and noble goals, for example, such as those presented by President Napolitano under the UC Carbon Neutral, the UC Carbon Neutrality Initiative. Institutions in Mexico could work on implementing many of the same actions that UC and California is leading by example. Let me read two quotes before I finish. This quote is from the UC report on the Carbon Neutrality Initiative. Use the California examples to help other state and city-level jurisdictions become living laboratories for renewable technologies and for regulatory as well as market-based solutions, and build cross-sectoral collaborations among urban stakeholders, because creating sustainable cities is a key to our planet. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable senators, California and Mexico share a common history that goes back to before the US and Mexico were founded. We share a long border and strong family ties. The table is set. We have the interest, we have the needs, and we have the opportunities to significantly benefit the communities on both sides of the border from this energy revolution. I want to end with a quote from Governor Brown. We must we must combine rigor and imagination to confront climate change. The rigor of scientific facts with this imagination to perceive what is now unseen. The dangers that lie ahead, if we don't act, are significant. Let's work much closer together, and let's share electrons, as President De Leon said. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for those amazing words. I want to apologize for not acknowledging our most dynamic senator, Connie Leyva, and we're now being joined by Senator Lara. And this brings us to an opportunity to ask questions of this panel, of Chairman Weisenmiller and of Herman Tribucate, if any of the members would like to engage. Did you want to make any comments? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for your remarks. And I just really want to say that I'm very excited that we are actually doing this and that we're trying to work together. It's so critically important. Your quote from the governor was, he was correct when he said that, and I appreciate you bringing that up again. And I was late to the meeting, so I don't know if it's already been addressed, but is there anything specific that we should be working on or we are working on to make sure that this relationship keeps going forward? Either one of you. Or if there's no answer, that's okay too.
Well, I think the major thing on all of this is to really make it a priority, this relationship, and to really listen in the relationship. So I think having this sort of hearing today, where you're really getting both sides of the border coming up with ideas, I think, you know, certainly I would want to encourage California companies, particularly the clean tech, to open up the door for internships for Mexican students. And again, it's trying to really, and similarly to open up the similar pathways in our education systems. UC, Stanford, you know, again, let's help grow the economy in Mexico.
I agree, it helps all of us, please.
If I may add to that. So I think we all acknowledge and understand the big opportunities. And can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. As Chair Weisenmiller says, making it a priority, I strongly believe there's no region in the world that would benefit more, that would bring more benefits to California and to the U.S. than really Mexico and bringing Mexico on board. And the biggest economic sector is energy. What can specifically be done? I think this type of in-person meetings are essential at the highest level. Having Deputy Secretary Latrana here is huge in my mind. We need to have more of this type of personal meetings. We're Mexicans, we need that. I can tell you that Mexico has right now developed stronger collaborations, or is in the process of developing very strong collaborations with Canada, the University of Calgary, the University of Alberta, with the European Union. Not as much as, not as strong, we don't have that yet with the University of California, for example. Why? I think in part because we need that presence. We need to see the highest rankings officials meeting more often and making it a priority. With Calgary, we have the president of the University of Calgary there, appointing a full-time person for the relationship with Mexico, visiting Mexico every 6 weeks. And now we have a partnership of more than $10 million there.
But I think that's a very good point, and it seems that we shouldn't be skipping over ourselves since California's in between Mexico and Canada. So you make a very good point, and I think you're right. In-person meetings are always best.
And if I may add one more
Of
thing,
course.
because what I see all the time is we discuss these great ideas, and I have to say I tend to go more on the big ideas and try, and maybe that's maybe a part of the problem. We should start maybe smaller, but then grow big. But a lot of the times we just see everything like no-brainer solutions.
Yeah.
But then the time comes to say, okay, who's going to pay for this? And then everybody just looks around and then,
I've got a no-brainer solution. We've already got millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure along the border with those smuggling tunnels that were built that are now in government hands. That could save us a lot of tunneling and permitting.
so the financing is a big question mark. And I can tell you that we've had discussions during this trip where the Mexican side and Deputy Secretary Beltran has expressed that they would be ready to put money to this relationship to fund, for example, the Mexican side. If we see similar efforts on this side, which is what's happening, again, with Canada and with Europe. Why not with California?
You're right. There's an old saying, show me where you spend your money and I'll tell you what your priorities are. So we need to make it a priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentations. We'll be moving on to the next panel, which is focused on the wholesale electricity market.